Hello, everybody. I know it's the end of the day, so I'm going to make this pretty short and sweet. Instead of a standard generic keynote, I think it would be a little bit more personal to share my story and how I kind of landed into crypto and blockchain and all that good stuff. So having said that, where do I start? My first interaction was actually on Richard Branson's private island on Necker Island. And lo and behold, I was a part of this competition for my last startup. It was the world's first smartphone medical breathalyzer. Yes, some of you guys have seen me on Shark Tank, but more importantly, I stayed there for an extra few days. And those extra few days changed my life. And why that was is similar that Mike knows, a good friend of mine, a fellow investor as well, was on the island. His name is Brock Pierce, as well as a fellow advisor, mentor, Bill Tai, and Sir Richard Branson himself is a huge advocate of blockchain, crypto, and the whole kind of movement that's going on. But nevertheless, the first blockchain summit occurred within those few days. And what I learned during those few days, it just completely blew my mind. However, I can't ignore nor deny the fact that I had a healthy amount of skepticism. To me, crypto, the whole blockchain, this thing called Bitcoin, I was in the connected sensor space, and there was a good 5-year wave window that I was riding. And I've exited a few companies, and I like touching hardware. I like seeing and developing user experience, UI, software that does real stuff. And so this whole crypto, blockchain, Bitcoin thing, I really was skeptical. But the following year, I went the second time, and the third year, which just recently occurred, I just exited my last company, Breathometer, and it got me thinking, and being around all these, obviously, these luminaries, especially Brock, who I credit a lot to, I really started kind of grasping the concept this thing that actually might be real. And I took a really practical application in terms of actually getting into the space. So, like most people, you want to dabble a little bit, and so I started trading. So I jumped onto Gemini, jumped onto Coinbase, and all the standard kind of exchanges that you guys have seen today. Started playing with about 50,000 at first, then about 100, turned that into about $500,000, and that all transacted within a couple weeks. Obviously, as most of you guys have seen, it's occurred roughly within probably about the past year in terms of the huge, massive critical mass point, whereby a lot of us has actually, if you're smart about it, have pulled out your gains, held your positions, shorted a lot of the Bitcoin, Ethereum, and all the following coins, and especially getting involved early days into the correct ICOs that are legitimate, that are compliant, and that have been successful. So having said that, it's been a really gnarly ride, but then I kind of backed up and said, well, this is real. The money actually got wired into my account. And so I kind of had an aha moment. And the next thing I did was, well, this is the next wave. And I believe personally that kind of been born and raised and have personally witnessed the Silicon Valley kind of dot-com boom as well as a bust. I was a little too young. I'm about to turn 35. And having said that, I was kind of a wee kid, and I feel like I kind of missed out, but I was able to see my stepfather kind of take advantage and get involved. But I certainly don't want to miss this one. This one's going to be much larger. It's a lot faster. And I feel that we can revolutionize this space, especially if we develop the community and the ecosystem appropriately. So that's kind of the vision and the kind of perspective, the vernacular that I looked within. And when I backed up and I went ahead and had all these meetings with a lot of my advisors and mentors, I kind of backed up and did some research and asked myself, what problems can be really solved in this space? I personally don't have enough of the technical, I would say jargon, if you will, as well as kind of the deep-seated knowledge to develop a protocol layer type application or get on the technology side of things. So I thought more so from an ecosystem perspective. And so my personal story is, and the general theme of this keynote is, it's going to be amazing to see a lot of, I would say, really bright, innovative entrepreneurs coming from all different walks of life come into this space. And I believe those are the guys that are actually going to go and innovate. Not the fintech guys, not the JP Morgan Chase guys, none of the investment bankers. It's going to be the actual technology enthusiasts that think creatively, that think differently, that they're going to come in this space with no context, and they're going to learn rapidly, and they're the ones that are going to innovate this space. So having said that, within about 3 months worth of time, credit to some of my team members back there. I got Erin back there, my chief of staff. Colette, she's just on board as the head biz dev. We have basically created this company called Cointopia, and this is the beginning of our journey. We basically have just recently founded the company back in September, but have operationalized this business within a few months. It's Cointopia, the world's first truly driven community token marketplace. So as you guys know, kind of the problem, I'm a big practical entrepreneur. I like to solve problems. I don't like to create trendy technologies or applications. I like to build real businesses that do real things and solve real problems. And so having said that, the problems that we solve, well, obviously, as you guys know, the ICO market's hot, it's frothy. We had a pretty big up, and then we had a pretty big deep dip, and then now we're going right back up. And there's gonna be a reemergence of the ICO market 2.0. So having said that, as you guys know, it's still chaotic. There's a lot of disorder. And still the SEC, right, the head commissioner, John Clayton, still hasn't really necessarily defined exactly what is a compliant ICO. So as we actually walk through the rest of this year, I believe we will have more visibility. But until then, it's still like the Wild West. And a good, probably arguably about 40, 50% at least minimum of the ICOs that have occurred so far are all scams, or they're non-compliant, and they're not operating ethically. So we as a company and as a more of a movement are moving forward to address this exact problem. So having said that, we want to drive a little order to the chaos. How do you do that? Well, first off, we are a platform. We are a technology solution. We're not another generic advisory firm. I'm going to be very clear about that. We're not AmbuSafe. We're not, say, CoinList. We're not any of those type of quote-unquote advisory firms trying to do everything or a little of anything, and et cetera, et cetera. What we are is really three parts. Again, we're a technology platform. That's our approach to the market. And three things we really focus on is one, the token sale. We actually are the first compliant broker-dealer licensed, and that's very key, compliant broker-dealer licensed ICO platform in this space. We just acquired our broker-dealer license through a partnership just a few weeks ago, and we're just signing the documentation now. So what we do is we essentially empower the ICO onto our platform. There's a client that we just signed on. We're under NDA, so I won't mention exactly who, but it's a Fortune 1000 company, I'll tell you that. And so we're going public within the next month or so. What I think is a very key, interesting note to take is that it's not just the protocol blockchain companies that are going to be ICOing. It's going to be the Fortune 1000s, the Fortune 100s, right? The Ford Motors of the world. What that's going to do is it's really going to drive change throughout this space. And it's really going to prove the actual velocity and the potential of what an ICO can do. And it's really the convergence of literally tokens, whether utility or security, converging with equity. So essentially, instead of selling stock in your company, eventually you'll be selling tokens, but those tokens can be utilized in various fashions. And it's no different in my mind how you use a token. You can consider a token similar to an arcade. What do you do when you go into an arcade? You exchange your fiat, US dollars, into arcade tokens, right? And those arcade tokens are built for a very specific function. And I speak in very simplistic, analogous terms because I think this space needs to be consumerized. It needs to be spoken in layman's terms. It's very technical, and the more technical it is, a lot of the majority of the mass market, it's going to be very difficult for the major adoption, mass commercialization, and what have you. So it's very important, I think, to the mass market when we start doing ICOs, and I think they'll get reached to the millions next year, and we're on the brink of it this year, that literally in order to reach the mass market, we have to break things down in layman's terms and have it so it's understandable and it's consumable by the average consumer, right? But having said that, what we want to do is do the due diligence, do the vetting, pick the very high quality ICOs in the space. Soon to be, we'll announce a few. One we actually just led was B-Token. It's the Airbnb of crypto. They just successfully conducted their ICO. We were involved in that. Just full disclosure, I'm an advisor to that company. But what you'll see is a new wave of the 2.0 ICO, which is it's regulated. You actually have governance like a board of directors similar to traditional venture funding. You'll have custodians actually holding the money, not say an ICO that takes in $100 or $200 million and gets to do whatever they want to do with it. I think those days after the second quarter of this year are going to be long gone, especially when the SEC drops the hammer. And a lot of people know the SEC, similar to FDA, it's world-renowned. We hold the standard in the United States, and I believe the rest of the world, including Japan, Korea, and all the other Asian countries, will also adopt. But going back to what we are as a solution, we're part one, a token sale platform. Again, I stress, broker-dealer license, we're compliant. We only deal with accredited investors. Part two, which is the most important piece for us, we're mainly differentiating the fact that we focus on the post-ICO management part of the process. So what does that mean? A lot of people are focused on ICOing successfully. Great, if you can get there. Once you tokenize, you have a responsibility. You have a responsibility to make sure you sustain governance, that you remain to be compliant, and that you make your, not stakeholders, but you make your token holders, buyers happy. So a lot of these ICOs are ingesting $50, $100 million, but then they drop off the face of the planet. You still need to communicate with them. You need to drop communication with them every quarter at least. You also need to go ahead and have transparency in terms of who actually owns your tokens, who's doing secondary trading. There's nobody doing that right now. It's a complete white space. So our model is really to approach it with a similar to eShares model. Some people are familiar with it. It manages your equity cap table. We're taking that very sexy UX UI approach and automating and driving a seamless experience to that whole entire process. 2, once you actually know who owns your tokens, the second thing you want to do is what? You want to drive value to your token. A lot of these tokens you can see are volatile, right? There's a lot of day traders here. And so what you got to focus on is with and through the community that we've developed is drive actual value to the token. And part of that is communication, but at the same time continuing to develop and utilize the cash that you actually raised to create that value. Lastly, analytics. Providing analytics in terms of why is your token dumping? Why is it increasing in value? You need to understand the ups and downs. And what's interesting is there's only a certain amount of allocation of wallets between each and every token. So there's actually there's what, roughly 10,000 Ethereum owners to this very day. That's an incredible amount of wealth within a very small, tiny demographic. With the other tokens that become commercialized and as they grow, and what we've done about close to about $6 billion worth of ICO activity like within the past few years, which is insane because that, like, venture capital can't even remotely come close to that. But trying to understand the analytics in terms of the actual HODLers, if you will, long-term holders versus the short-term holders, that is going to be fundamentally interesting to understand that analysis. And that data is going to be very, very, very powerful and very compelling. Lastly, we're providing a marketplace similar to Yelp, Elance, or Odesk to drive transparency and democratize pricing with all these service providers that are required to do a compliant and successful ICO. So we're the law firm, a PR firm, a token strategist, a white paper author, a security auditor, whatever you need. Think of it as a Yelp or Elance or Odesk model. We are actually onboarding about close to 100 service providers right off the bat. We're about to go ahead and onboard close to 100,000 accredited investors on Cointopia. And we have almost about a $4 billion pipeline of ICOs right off the bat with no word of mouth. Or sorry, with word of mouth, no real mass marketing, and that's all been inbound. So kind of closing off here, I know I only have a couple minutes. These are some of our partners. A little big shout out to D10E, Mike Kustash, he's the man. But we've managed in a very short period of time to bring on some pretty strong, compelling partners, everything from Consensus to security auditors like Zeppelin, Civic for the crypto blockchain OAuth, Stellar as another alternative to Ethereum, which basically focuses on a decentralized exchange, and obviously our law firm Cooley and Oric, as well as the ISO Governance Foundation. Shout out to our advisor Miko. Self-governance is the most powerful form of governance. So really quickly behind us, myself, founder, 3-time serial entrepreneur. Yes, I'm on Shark Tank. But outside of that, I've built an amazing team. Everyone's really, really strong in what they do. We range everything from Google, essentially, to Twitter, to Intuit now, and Adobe, et cetera, and we all come from fintech. A majority of us do. And some of the investors and advisors. We have everyone from Gil Pincino, Brock Pierce, obviously Michael Turpin, and Richard Titus, who's here as well, and Jeremy Gardner. And we're onboarding a few more in the upcoming days. So that's us. We hope to really enable the entrepreneurs in this room and everywhere else to drive change, positive change, and to really basically drive a compliant, successful ICO to market. If you guys have any questions, our team's right over here. I'm over here, happy to help you. I think we can only drive positive change into this community and really innovate if we work collectively together. So thank you for your time. Appreciate it.